why our gut health and digestion is so important for, kind of getting over those pelvic dysfunctions that we have. And I want to talk about that today. And I want to talk about why does having an unhealthy gut affect, or how does that unhealthy gut that we have affect pelvic dysfunction?
You
And
want to talk about poo, is what you want to do.
we're talking about poo. Hey ladies, welcome back to the Strong Mom channel. And today we've got a guest with us. Her name is Chana Ross, and she is a passionate women's health advocate. She is the clinical director and pelvic health physiotherapist at Vital Physiotherapy and Wellness, a women's health and pelvic health physiotherapy clinic in Midtown Toronto. Chana lives to empower her team, colleagues, and clients by coaching them, mentoring, and educating them to provide excellent care and live the lives of their dreams. Chana provides prenatal and postpartum physiotherapy as well as rehabilitation for all forms of pelvic pain and dysfunction. She's a sought-after educator and teacher and regularly speaks about pelvic health, prenatal preparation, and the realities of parenthood, and loves to empower clients to take the lead in their health and lifestyle. Most recently, Chana is using her expertise in the realm of virtual physiotherapy care to coach and empower manual health practitioners on how to provide exceptional virtual care to their clients. So Chana, I want to thank you so much for coming on today. And I don't think we've actually met in person, but I feel like we know each other already, right?
Same. I'm like,
right? Social
we've
media
hung
has
out
been.
before.
So, not so long ago, you were on I want to call it not a webinar, but it was like this group thing where it was mostly naturopathic doctors talking about gut health. It was a summit, and you were the only pelvic health physiotherapy, which was awesome. And so you were bringing this, perspective from a physiotherapist, but a pelvic health perspective of why our gut health and digestion is so important for, kind of getting over those pelvic dysfunctions that we have. And I want to talk about that today. And I want to talk about why does having an unhealthy gut affect, or how does that unhealthy gut that we have affect pelvic dysfunction?
You
And
want to talk about poo, is what you want to do.
we're talking about poo.
Okay, let's do it. Um, sorry, so I cut you off there. So how does it affect pelvic health dysfunction?
Yeah,
And just
exactly.
in
And
general.
I want to step back because I know a lot of times people will say, well, my gut's fine. Okay. And if we talk about digestion, yeah, my digestion's fine. And I want to take a step back here because when I was, in school learning about digestion and nutrition, I was like, yeah, my digestion's fine, but we don't really know what that actually encompasses. So, for those of you who are watching, we're talking about, do you have excessive flatulence? Or do you have a lot of gas, right? If you do, that could be a sign that something's off with your digestion and or gut health. Same thing when it comes to going to the washroom too much, like thinking you got to go number two multiple times during the day. Or on the flip side, constipation,
Yes.
right?
And you can go every
Burping.
day and still be constipated.
Sorry, say that again.
You can go every single day and still be constipated.
Wow. Okay. And that's a great point. And so I guess we'll get into that and what your poop should be looking like, right? And then, yeah, just gas, burping, excessive kind of gas like that. So tell us, how does that affect our pelvic health?
Okay, are you ready? Let's do this. So there's such a huge relationship between the gut and your pelvic floor and pelvic health conditions as well. So um, as a pelvic health physio, I treat constipation. If somebody's incontinent, or they're leaking urine, one of the first things we do is make sure they're not constipated, because constipation, especially in children, is one of the leading causes of incontinence. There's just only so much room within your pelvis.
Right.
And at the very most basic level, your digestive system, it starts at your stomach, at your I'm pointing to my mouth and saying stomach, starts at your mouth,
Yeah.
it ends at your anus.
Mm-hmm.
And your external anal sphincter is part of the pelvic floor musculature. So
Right.
from a physiological anatomical perspective, the pelvic floor is part of our entire digestive system.
Right.
What for people who don't know what the pelvic floor is, although I'm sure you talk about it all the time,
Yes.
it's a group of muscles at the base of the pelvis, and they have 5 jobs. And one of their jobs is actually to hold in urine, hold in fecal matter, hold in gas when you're not ready to release it, and to actually be able to properly release and easily release when you're sitting on the toilet ready to go.
Right.
So there's a number of pieces around loose stool, which actually some people will think is gas. And so we have people who think they're releasing gas and instead have a bowel movement, or they're incontinent because the sensation within the anus, it feels like it's gas and ends up being very loose stool.
Right.
But we also have people who can't release stool at all.
Right.
Both of those can be issues with your digestion, English, but also can be issues of the pelvic floor, because if those muscles are not holding in the that fecal matter well, you're going to leak. If there's poor nervous system relations, like the brain and the muscles are not connecting well, there's miscommunication. You can release something that you shouldn't be releasing at the time when you want to release. But likewise, if those muscles are just on all day, every day, and you're just sitting on the toilet and bearing down and pushing and pushing and pushing, like that's not a digestive issue. That's actually a pelvic floor issue. It's a muscle relaxation issue. Those muscles are just overworking and not allowing stool to be released.
Right.
So basic level, like physiologically, those muscles, it's their job to make sure that things are leaving that need to leave and staying in when they need to stay in.
Exactly. And you know what? It's funny that you mentioned that. I, in my past, had an issue with having to go to the bathroom, number 2, like 20 times a day. But thinking like it came with bloating and gas, and thinking I need to go to the bathroom, but it was nothing but gas. And you're right. I'm sitting at my desk, at my office job, holding it because, okay, I can't let it. I got to get to the bathroom and then I can, let it go. So yeah, just holding in, whether that's stool or gas, definitely you've got bearing down on the pelvic floor and the anus, the sphincter there.
Now let's take it a step further for you, because why not? When you're stressed, when you find that you are in like a state, are you the type of person who gets constipated, or are you the type of person who spends the whole time in the bathroom?
I know when I'm very stressed, and it comes out in my rosacea face actually. But I'm like a 2 time a day girl. And so my stress, not that I've noticed, affects my bowel movements. I haven't been stressed in a while, like really stressed. So I haven't put those 2 things together, but I'll watch out for them.
So that's all to say that your actual, like your nervous system, your body's level of either fight or flight or rest or relax affects your gut as well. We know that our gut is we consider it our second brain, but it has more nerves and neurotransmitters than even our brain. There's a lot of stuff happening. I keep pointing to my belly, but you can't see it on camera, but just use your imagination. But when we're in this upregulated state, it actually can have an effect on our bowel movements, and our pelvic floor actually gets direct input from our fight or flight system. So when we're really in like a stressed out, upregulated state, and this doesn't have to be something particularly stressful, like a major life circumstance in your life. Like we live in Toronto, Ontario. Like there was a go lifestyle until we had to stop going for a while. but we almost all live in this sort of like um, human doings versus human being state, like our values and what we're doing, and we're constantly trying to do that actually takes our whole nervous system and brings it into this fight or flight experience
Mhm.
versus a rest and relax and rest and digest experience. So
Right.
our digestion is affected by that, and so is our pelvic floor. When you're running away from a tiger, our pelvic floor actually gets messages to contract and protect, because when we genuinely were running away from a tiger, it didn't make sense to stop and like tinkle in the woods or stop
Right.
and like have a quickie with your honey. Like that wasn't happening. So
Right.
we just contract our pelvic floor and go. But if we don't address our stress coping skills and we don't take the time to actually balance out our nervous system, bring on the relaxation response every day, you know, meditation, yoga, breathing, qigong, just being,
Mhm.
um, then what ends up happening is our pelvic floor remains in that stressed out state, which makes it harder for our digestion to work,
Right.
and we're already in a state where we're not in a prime rest and digest system.
Yeah. And you know what? I know why now you asked me if have been stressed out. I am a type A person. I've got all of these things scheduled out. And, seeing my pelvic health physio 2 years ago, she said, you're a type A person. I can tell. And she was telling, doing an internal exam at the time. She
Yeah.
said, you are more prone
She was
to,
telling you from like, she was back with your knees bent and she was talking to you all.
yes, yes, you are
Joking,
more
yeah.
prone to hypertonic pelvic floor. So yes, yes, I did need to work on strengthening and endurance in my pelvic floor, but I also needed to work on relaxing my pelvic floor. And ever since then, and learning everything that I know now, and working with my clients in pelvic floor, I will just be driving my car. I'm relaxed, but I will just bring awareness to what's happening up here. And for
Yes.
whatever reason, I am frowning for no reason. And I know that when I am frowning, I am tight and holding my pelvic floor. I'm not gripping it and doing like a huge Kegel, but I know that I can relax it. So you don't have to be a hugely stressed out mom to be having a stressful or even tight pelvic floor for sure.
Right, right. And in no way am I saying, well, women just have to relax. Like, no, I am not saying that. But what I am saying is like our system needs balance.
Hmm.
And sometimes like with a lot of clients we'll see like I'm type A. I call myself a recovering perfectionist. Like I tend to attract that kind of client too.
Right.
And I'm not, if I keep sending somebody home and saying you have to just release your pelvic floor, release your pelvic floor, but we're it's almost like a band-aid solution, because if we're continuing to send that input, very very smart input, like our brains are incredible. If
Hmm.
we're in this continuous protect state, we need to address the state of our being, or your pelvic floor is going to remain
Right.
contracted, because it's just responding to all this brilliant network and the protective system that we have.
Hmm.
So there needs to be like a big, almost like a big picture take on all of these things. That's not necessarily go get your nails done and go get a massage, but it's actually how can we integrate um, purposeful relaxation techniques, or evoking the relaxation response every day, so that our gut, our pelvic floor, our brains, our cortisol, like everything is sort of creating some form of balance.
Right, exactly. Yeah, the stress piece is huge. I have a client who has pelvic organ prolapse, and we see each other week by week. And one week I came, and she's like, "Oh, things are so much worse this week." And I said, "Oh, what's happening?" She's like, "My baby is sick, and this is happening, and this is going on." I'm like, "Okay, it's the stress, right?" And she felt
Yep.
like, "Yeah, I kind of took a step back this week, and things kind of felt like they got worse, and the heaviness and all this." I'm like, "Okay, that sickness with the baby's over. Let's keep progressing." And then, it it got better. So yeah, stress definitely can make you feel like you've taken a step back. So that's definitely
Absolutely.
very important.
And it manifests itself in your symptoms as
Yeah,
well.
right.
Um,
So then what are some ways, like you said, yeah, we focus on relaxing, we focus on these things. What are some ways to increase the health of our gut?
so what we kind of think about things in terms of like pillars of health, right? Like, what are you eating and drinking? Are you moving? Are you sleeping? What are your coping mechanisms? And
Mm,
also, what are your social supports?
right,
So when we're looking at like gut specifically, we can talk about like eating green leafies and tending to try to eat the rainbow and drinking water and trying to avoid caffeine closer to bedtime. But
right.
we also have to take into account the fact that like um, you need to be sleeping, right?
Mhm.
Like when I wake up for an early flight, there were days when I used to go flying. Uh, my stomach was upset the whole rest of the day because I missed out on sleep.
Right.
Right? When I used to study, again, type A, like I was studying, I'd like wake up early and go to sleep late. My stomach was a mess. I was, those things there's no, I don't like to think of us as like, the mind body connection that we're one and the same. And so,
Yeah.
you're mentioning like I was on this naturopathic um,
Summit.
summit. Thank you for English language. I appreciate it. And I always refer to naturopaths for those pieces, but like they were talking about poo, and I'm like, I can talk about poo because there's a lot that we can do from a pelvic health perspective, like
Hmm.
making sure we're breathing every day. Our pelvic floor and our diaphragm, when they're working in synchrony, they actually massage your intestines.
Yeah.
There are external massages we can do, the I love you massage, just to
Yes.
gently start to encourage the gut to move along.
Right.
Things like using the squatty potty or raising your knees
I
when
love it.
you're
I love the squatty potty.
I'm gonna give it to
Okay.
everybody.
I know. I gave one to my mom and my mother-in-law for Christmas, and they're like, "Ah, thanks. What is this?" I'm like, guys, and you know what's
And then
funny?
3 weeks later, they're probably like, "You changed my
And
life."
it's funny because my mom says I don't have any problem going to the bathroom. I'm like, me neither. But trust me, when you sit on this, it will just make it easier and faster, and like it's all good. So yes, we definitely have a couple around our house. That said, I remember going to, and I talk about poo a lot with my clients too. So there's the Bristol stool chart. So
Mhm.
tell us, what should our poo be looking like? Because a lot of us, we don't want to talk about this, and a
Yep.
lot of us actually don't know. So can you tell us what should it look like?
So the Bristol stool chart, I wish I had one right in front of me, but I don't. But there's they go through different numbers and different stool types, and it ranges from like the rabbit pellets, like hard small pellets, all
Right.
the way to liquid form. And we
Hmm.
don't want it really to be on your stool to be on either end. What we're
Right.
really looking for is like I call it like toothpaste, right?
Right.
Like
Yes.
a nice soft little
Exactly. The
S.
S shape.
Exactly. Or like a log, like a not a log of pellets stuck together, but a
Right.
softer grouping to
Right.
happen. That's we call it type 3 or type 4. On
Hmm.
either side, we're looking on constipation very frequently, or we're looking at issues around poor fluid and food and nutrient uptake. Like there's on either side, it's an indication that things are probably not functioning well in your gut and from your musculature.
Right. And when you said you could poop once a day but still be constipated, I'm thinking that's probably people who are pellet poops, right?
Yeah, or even just a smaller type 3. But we really want people to be having um, both kinds of fiber in their diet. So there's soluble fiber and insoluble fiber.
Right.
And the easiest way to get that is to just have like an apple a day. I know
Mhm.
keeps the doctor away, also keeps the poo in the toilet. Like so
Right.
an apple has both the soluble and insoluble fiber, but
Mhm.
we can't have fiber without water.
Mhm.
A lot of my clients are coming to me like, I'm having fiber one, I'm this and I'm that, and they're not drinking enough fiber. enough water, or they're drinking water in a way where they're like just chugging water and then they're dehydrated. So we almost overwhelm the system with water. It
Right.
creates a stretch reflex in the bladder. They pee most of it out and their body doesn't actually utilize it.
Right.
And what that does when you're having fiber and you're not taking in water continuously throughout the day is it actually almost creates cement in your intestines. So when
Right.
we start to integrate like just sipping water throughout the day and adding in a little bit of fiber, that's when people come in and they're like, oh, I didn't realize I was constipated, right?
Yes.
Because in our mind, constipated means not going to the bathroom for 6 days in a
Right.
row. Not that we're not fully evacuating. And that's when you start to see like bloating and gas, and that kind of buildup is often tied to, a microbiome, gut microbiome stuff, but also a backup of stool.
And this also affects diastasis recti. So
Yes.
same thing. A lot of my clients, I just remember one of my clients, Julie, she barely ate anything. She was on stool softeners and not drinking enough water. And, I said, okay, you need to start drinking water. Just start eating. Start eating. Like, I know you're a mom, but you've got to eat 3 meals a day, not just one. And as soon as we did that, within 1 or 2 weeks, she's like, oh my gosh, I don't need the stool softeners anymore. And look at my belly. I'm like, because you were so backed up and you just looked like, belly distended and just bloated. Yeah.
And diastasis is such a fascinating realm. We could talk probably for a whole hour on that. But it really, when people come in and they're like, I want to rehab my abs, the belly that we have postpartum is so complex. It's, there are people who like, we're going to rehab them amazingly, and they still might have a little bit of adipose tissue there. They'll have, skin laxity, and they'll often, if there's a dysregulation in their microbiome, they might have bloating because, they're not eating. They're not eating enough to support their caloric needs. They're not eating enough to ensure that everything's moving through them. Like there's so many things, and when we start to see clients who just have a belly, and they're like, I don't get it. And they're trying to not eat because they don't want the belly. It's like not drinking because you don't want to leak.
Right.
Dehydration causes leaking, and not eating it's so fascinating that our bodies truly need stuff from us. And we need to be eating. We need nutrients. We need water, and things work better when we feed ourselves well.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, exactly. Yes. Thank you for that. What are there any, I guess, so we talked about gut health, I guess all encompassing for diastasis as well as incontinence, and pelvic organ prolapse. I guess they all intertwine, right?
Something
Go ahead.
that I should add also is like pelvic girdle pain is something that we know now is very tied to the gut and gut microbiome as well.
Okay.
And not just that, but our hormone levels, specifically perinatal pelvic girdle pain. We used to say, oh, it's muscles, it's this, it's that. But what we know is like, it's the expectations of our clients around whether or not they're going to get better.
Right.
It's all of these elements of the social support of whether or not we're actually, are we creating an inflammatory state? And so our body is getting sent these sensations and this information that we need to protect. So it's actually fascinating the ways that our body gives us information. Sometimes it's in the form of constipation and bloating, and sometimes it's in the form of pain.
Right. Yeah, Dr. Sinead and I had spoken about that. We have another YouTube video on that about pelvic girdle pain for sure. Awesome. All right, let's move on to the next question. Since we're talking about things down there, I've had the question, what is the deal with queefing? So AKA vaginal farts or vaginal gas. what does this mean? I've had some clients ask me, does it mean I'm too loose down there? Does it mean, like what's going
Mm.
on? And so, number one, is it normal? And further to that question, I know this doesn't just happen to moms because I know that it does happen to younger kids as well,
Mm.
younger girls as well.
Yeah.
So this is a question I had to ask because I'm like, I don't really know about that. Let me get the expert to weigh in here.
Let's talk about it. So I hate the word. I hate to say things are normal or not normal. It's common.
Okay.
We see that a lot. There's no around your urethra where your pee comes out of. There's a sphincter muscle, and
Mhm.
around your anus where your poo comes out of, there's a sphincter muscle. There's no
Right.
sphincter muscle around our vagina.
Okay.
So air can get in, and sometimes needs to get out.
Right.
The within the vaginal wall there are rugae, so there's little sort of rouged walls.
Okay.
And in around pregnancy or after birth, if you've birthed vaginally, those walls expand and usually take about a year to contract back down.
Okay. A whole year. Interesting. I never heard that. Okay.
Yeah. And there's a whole bunch of different elements in terms of what the capacity of the vagina is. But essentially, if things are too tight
Mm-hmm.
or they're too weak,
Mm-hmm.
air can get trapped in your vagina. We see it a lot in athletes when they're doing handstands or they're in positions with their legs up, and during yoga, where air gets trapped, and then queefing is the release of air.
Right.
We see it a lot with women who have had pelvic organ prolapse, that they get into a
Okay.
position where the organ descends and then goes
Right.
back up, and then the air gets trapped.
Ah.
In my experience, most of the clients that I see who are experiencing queefing have muscles that are overworked,
Okay.
so they're actually clenching, and when we start to get more of that range of motion back, and they get that more of that coordination, and
Yep.
they stop experiencing it.
Okay.
We also see a changes if we change their breathing pattern, because sometimes they're breath holding and they're sucking up and in, and then that's when they start to get air trapped in there as well. So there's a lot of things that we can do to change it.
Right.
It happens because there's no sphincter there.
Okay.
But generally speaking, if your muscles are at resting state, it doesn't happen quite as frequently. It's
Okay.
usually a sign that there's something on the
Right.
other end.
So if you are experiencing the vaginal gas, it could mean that you are either too tight or too loose.
Or that movement that you're experiencing with you needs to be coordinated, that you need to
Got
be
you.
trained in that movement.
Right. Okay. So
Right? That you're
whatever.
compensating in some way. Like it might just be for that movement, you're clenching your pelvic floor, or you're sucking in your belly, or your whole breath holding.
Right.
Right. It couldn't just mean for that movement itself
Got you. Okay.
versus a
Awesome.
state. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. Okay. Thank you for clearing that up. Okay,
Love it.
so a big one, and you talk about this a lot. And guys, I know you'll probably want to reach out to Hannah later on. All of the links for her website and Instagram will be down below. So I want to talk, you talk a lot about painful sex after having a baby. So, I have clients like this too. Why is this happening? Is it just for moms who have had a vaginal birth, or does it happen with moms who also are having C-section? And what can we do about it? Like, I guess the first question is with the clients I've had, oh my gosh, why am I having painful sex? How do I get rid of it?
Yeah.
So what's going on here?
Okay, so there's actually so many reasons why sex can be painful.
Okay.
There's the biggest piece is also that we minimize it, and then these women go on into this experience of like they keep trying and trying and trying, and what we do is we actually reinforce the protection around this act, so then they start to, in anticipation of experiencing penetration, they start to protect, like, and then we
Right.
reinforce it.
Yes.
So first of all, yes, have a glass of wine if you want to. That is, if you're experiencing pain with sex, that is not the solution.
Right.
Let's just say that. Okay?
Right.
Now, postpartum specifically, and if you are if for people who are breast or chest feeding, there's actually a massive dip in estrogen that happens. We consider it a mini menopause around that time.
Okay.
And estrogen is like it's like our plumper hormone. It's the hormone that gives our muscles a little bit of oomph when we're, when we're weight training or when we're Kegling.
Right.
And it also helps to lubricate our vaginas when we're aroused.
Mm-hmm.
So what women find around menopause, and also even if they're pumping or they're, or their breast or chest feeding, is they start to notice, the clients of mine are calling it like the Sahara Desert.
It's a what?
The Sahara Desert is
Oh.
what I said. Yeah. Yes, that's what I said. And because we don't lubricate in the same way, even though like they might be aroused, they're not lubricating. And so there's actual chafing that happens.
Right.
The tissue in and around the vagina is like your hands in the winter, like when they start to crack, it makes you more prone to yeast infections and UTIs and that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so we're finding a lot more that more GPs or gynecologists are actually prescribing topical estrogen.
Okay.
For during that period, or for people who are experiencing or going through menopause or perimenopause.
Okay.
So then it's not, the baby isn't affected, but that tissue itself, which is now drier, can actually benefit from that topical estrogen.
Right.
We have topical moisturizers
Right.
that you can use, which are different than lube.
Yeah.
But we also recommend lube.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
That is the solution to pain because of dryness due to
dryness. Yes.
Okay.
Good. Thank you. And I knew that happens at menopause, right? I didn't know that in breastfeeding, it kind of simulated the kind of same hormonal response.
Yes. It's like a massive, like when we think about the changes that go through your body, like between prenatal and postpartum, the number of changes it's miraculous.
Yes,
but
it is.
But it's not always easy. So we need
Right.
support, right?
Yeah.
Another cause of painful sex is for people who have delivered vaginally, or people who had emergency C-sections after attempting, after laboring for a long time, is the fact that, our pelvic floor, our bodies, they're made to birth. They are. It doesn't mean it's any less traumatic for our body. We don't have to recover. If the last thing that you went through was having a full human pass through your vaginal canal, your unconscious, even though that was safe, our unconscious brain still goes into protection. Our unconscious mind is like, something dangerous happened there. We need to protect. And similar to the discussion that we had around constipation, that means we're gonna send signals to contract,
right?
And also, our danger signal in our body is pain. Pain is your brain's way of saying, is there something dangerous there? Yes, then we experience pain.
Right.
So there's a real remapping of safety that has to happen in and around your vulva and your vagina. Not to mention if there was any lacerations or tearing or cutting that happens. Right. Then we also experience the like a true physical harm in that area,
right?
Which we could rehab from and all those things, but we really truly need to remap that area. We do find that after C-sections, there's a vast number of women who are experiencing postpartum pain with sex, or people who are trying to have penetration who have pain with sex. If somebody has a C-section and it was their plan to have a vaginal delivery, there's a very deep-seated belief that there's something wrong with our bodies, and there's a lot of grief that happens. There's a lot of shame, and and like the vagina almost becomes an area where that we don't even want to, we don't want to acknowledge, and we believe is dangerous.
Right.
Right? I mean, again,
Yeah.
in our minds, we
Yeah.
know that's not dangerous, but we're talking about unconscious systems, protective systems happening here. And
Exactly.
all of those things are things that we can retrain, we can work through. But I think that when we think about postpartum and our experiences postpartum, we think just the physical elements, and we all of these physical pieces have such, they can go so much deeper into, you know, our beliefs around who we are as parents, and what our bodies are capable of.
Yes. Yes, true. Are there any others that you want to bring up with regard to painful sex?
I mean, there's a history of trauma. There's,
Right.
you know, there's actual, there are sometimes reasons where like people who have had fibroids or endometriosis or a whole bunch of other, you know, there's other physical conditions where that cause pelvic pain.
Gotcha.
And you know, then result in painful sex and painful penetration.
Right. Right.
And all of those are addressed in the same like biopsychosocial perspective. We address the person, we address who they are, their relationships, their physical body, their beliefs, and all of those pieces result in a management of pain.
I like how you say that. And that's true because a lot of my clients or even friends that I have, we don't think about that biopsychosocial. We're just like, okay, give me some exercise, do whatever you need to do down there and let me be on my way.
Yeah,
But
just get it done, right?
You just dig and asked all these pertinent questions that were like, what's that got to do with anything? I can just imagine my mom being like that. What's that got to do with anything? Like, you know, but it's true. And we don't necessarily think about those things.
We're so complex, right?
Yeah.
Like when, you know, like when I'm always kind and nice and I never lose it at my children, but sometimes I lose my patience.
Yeah.
And it could have had to do with something that happened 4 hours ago, but then my kid is saying, but mommy, my mommy, and I'm like, you know, I lose it at my kid. I'm not losing at my kid because our relationship.
Right.
Complex. There's stuff that's gone on before. Like you know, we respond, right?
Yes, so true. Yeah. For myself, I remember having a friend at work and we were just talking about sex after baby. And she's like, oh, yeah, I had sex after like 5 days. I'm like, what? I was like, oh, I waited 6 months, 6 months.
Yeah, and that's very common.
And not because I had pain. I was just like, it was everything. New mom, breastfeeding. I'm on all the time. Don't touch me down there. Like, just give it a rest, right?
Yeah. Like your sense of self is like, you know, and that's a huge piece of this as well. Is that I think that a lot of our clients, they feel compelled to be sexual at a time when they don't feel sexual.
Yes. Yeah. Very true. Very true. Thank you for that. What are your thoughts about Kegel balls or Kegel trainers?
What have you seen people have success with them?
I've heard a lot of things. So I've had clients who were recommended to get them from their physiotherapist, and they use them, and they were the wrong size, and then there is all that went around with it. I think this is a loaded question because not one size fits all. So whether you have incontinence or prolapse, which I've been told before that Kegel, the balls or the trainers are not for prolapse, but some people have said they are for prolapse. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of like, I don't know. I'm not the expert.
So I think that this concept feeds into this idea that if you're having pelvic health issues, if you're incontinent, if you're having pain, if you have prolapse, it's because you're too weak. And it's like a significant oversimplification of what these muscles are and what they do and what their role is. Mm-hmm. I don't recommend Kegels alone. We have a whole system where we know the diaphragm and the pelvic floor and the inner abs, inner back muscles, they work together. I don't prescribe exercises I would never say just Kegel. There would always be other pieces involved.
Right.
But that also assumes that your your symptoms are because of that weakness. And what we
Mm.
know is that these are muscles like any other. They have to turn on. You could have the strongest muscles, and if you sneeze and your muscles don't turn on at the right time, doesn't matter how strong they are. If their timing is off,
Yeah,
not helping you, right?
exactly.
They have to be coordinated with those other team members that we talked about. They have to be flexible. They have to be able to contract and relax. They
Hmm.
have to like they have to be, there's so much more to this than just strengthening.
Yeah.
If the only element that you are missing is the ability to contract and contract well, then I'd say, okay, so work on your strength. I'm not sure from a functional perspective any time, like, how that's functionally training you, that you would ever be walking around be like, oh, I have the diaper bag in this hand and my purse in this hand, I'll just hold something else in my vagina. But
Right.
like, like, I don't know when you would ever hold something there.
Right.
um but certainly if you're doing everything, you have no symptoms, and your strength against gravity is strong, and you're like, I want to go to the next level, like I don't know, the Olympics of pelvic strength, then that would be an appropriate time. But
Right.
to train somebody who is weak, I don't, it doesn't really seem like something that would be within the realm. I can't conceive of a time when I'm open to the fact that maybe I would, but I can't
Right.
conceive of a time that I would recommend them. But I
Right.
also, those muscles should not be on all the time.
Mhm.
So that endurance hold is not really something, we're not really recommending that for longer than 10 seconds at a time.
Right.
Um, so if you're like putting it in and taking it, I don't.
Okay. So to back up, yeah, great answer. There's not one size fits all. And here's the thing. I have a lot of American clients who I train virtually. And I don't know what it is with American physiotherapists, but it doesn't matter where in the US they've been. I've had a lot of clients who have come to me and said, please go to a physiotherapist just so that we know your pelvic floor muscles are working, relaxing, contracting as they should. And they're like, well, she never did an internal exam. And I'm like, she didn't. And this is like 3 or 4 of my clients. And I said, well, she should. No. And I said, she does. Like, I have to tell them specifically what to say on the phone. Make sure that she will do an internal exam. And without even doing an internal exam, these physiotherapists have recommended they use the Kegel balls or the Kegel trainers. I'm like, no, what? Because I don't think that they are necessary. And so when I hear this, I'm like, I don't know why this is happening. But my sister-in-law is a physiotherapist, and she thinks that the US is very litigious, and perhaps they're kind of going away from the internal exams that are so important, because I think that is the biggest thing that we need to know, so that
Most
if you
empowering thing to know also,
if
right?
you are a candidate for using these products, right? I wouldn't use one of these products unless, Hannah, you did an internal exam on me and told me, yes, Denise, I think you should, or no, you
Right,
shouldn't. Because
right.
me alone, I don't know. Okay, yeah, I can do a Kegel, but should it be stronger? I don't know. Like, I don't know that, right?
That's why
So
I go to see my pelvic physio. Yeah.
exactly. So, yeah, I'm kind of in the boat with you on that, and I don't know why I'm seeing this a lot with my American clients. Maybe it's just the litigious nature
I
of
don't
them.
know, but I do think it does speak to the fact that, like, getting credentialed, at least in Canada, I can speak to this as a pelvic health physio. It's a weekend course. So not all pelvic physios are created equal, right? Like
Mm,
in my clinic, my therapists have a significant number of courses before I'll even hire somebody who I
right.
will then train for 6 weeks before allowing them to see any one of my clients.
Yes. Great.
So it could just speak to the fact that maybe they're just seeing therapists who are earlier on in their careers and haven't yet, maybe are uncomfortable suggesting having an internal exam,
Right.
or they're working in a clinic where they don't have a private room, so they're offering this service, but they're going to do
Mm,
it in a way that works for that clinic.
right.
um, it's certainly fascinating. but also speaks to the fact that like we really just want a quick, quick and dirty answer, you know, and that's, you know, I always say rehab is kind of boring, but it works.
Yeah.
So, you know, we can't just say, you know, use this Dr. Hose pulsar and it's
Right.
going to fix everything. You got to put in the work.
Yes, yes, exactly. Thank you for that. And Hannah, we'll wrap up here. Hannah, can you tell everybody where they can find you?
Yes, I can. You can follow me at Chana Ross PT on Instagram. You can follow my clinic, Vital Physiotherapy and Wellness, on Instagram, and you can find out more about pelvic health physio, what we do, at vitalphysiotherapy.com.
And last question, do you only see, because I know you're doing a lot more online now, are you able to see Canadians, you know, all over every single province and territory?
So within Canada, there's now changed some of the rules where you can get a license to see people interprovincially.
Right.
We are licensed throughout all of Ontario,
Okay.
and we've had a number of clients who, you know, want to see us in other provinces, and so we just get in touch with their regulating college and of that province, and it's pretty easy to get. They recognize within the different provinces.
Okay, so it's, I guess what I'm asking is, do you see other people in the US or any other country, or just Canada?
Just primarily Ontario and Canada, and in the US it's complicated. Every single state has its own rules, so some
Okay.
will allow people who are regulated outside of the state to provide therapy within the state, and similar with other countries, some will and some won't.
Gotcha.
If anybody's interested, get in touch with me, and we can do some research. We are doing so much research on all these points. It's fascinating.
I'm sure, because as I said, I have a lot of American clients. I'm like, yeah, I got some people you could reach out. So hoping that, you know, you could work virtually in some capacity. So
Love it. I love it.
awesome.
Yeah, consult.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.